Hi everyone, welcome to the new episode of the Prime U series of interviews with top business and technology leaders. I'm Dana Kohut, your host. This is a very special episode. I'm in San Francisco Intercontinental, so you can see it's not my usual location, but my very special guest today is Liran Haimovic, who is CTO and co-founder of Rookout, a company that built a robust observability tool. And today, Liran, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. My first question is about your decision to start your own company after working for over a decade in cybersecurity.
So my name is Liran Haimovic, and I'm the co-founder and CTO at Rookout. I've been doing computer sciences professionally for about 15 years now, computer engineering, and probably going back another 5-10 years as a hobbyist. So I spent most of my career, the first decade of it, doing cybersecurity as a researcher, engineer, product manager, and so on. And I learned a lot about how software works behind the scenes, and how does cybersecurity offense and defense play along those lines. And then about 5 years ago, I decided to leave cybersecurity and wanted to found my own company. And I wanted to deal with pains that every software engineer has, which is about dev tools and DevOps and so on. And I felt very closely to one of the biggest pains I've personally had, which was debugging. And debugging can be very, very difficult, especially with modern software. And me and my co-founder felt that we kind of have a new perspective on the subject based on our cybersecurity expertise and mindset. And we kind of felt like we can build a new kind of debugger and a new kind of data collection and data observability tool that allows you to operate in production in a very similar manner to how you would operate on your development machine, laptop, and so on, kind of bringing the two worlds together and giving you the best of both.
Well, that is actually great motivation to start your own company after actually learning the pains of your potential customers, knowing the problem from the inside. I really like that. Liran, if you could elaborate a little bit on your Rookout, the solution that Rookout has to offer from the other observability tools available in the market.
So traditional observability tools generally fall into one of two options for instrumenting your code. The first approach is the do-it-yourself approach. You get a set of APIs, whether it's a logging framework or a metric framework or an APM, and it's up to you to decide what to collect. The benefits of that is that you can go as deep as you want, and you can tailor the data you're collecting based on your needs. You can deep dive into your business logic, and you create very accurate perspective, very accurate reflection of what's going on within your code in the observability tool. The downside of that is that it's a lot of work, and every small change you want to make means changing the code, testing the change, and releasing a new version and deploying it, which is going to take you anywhere from a few hours to a few months, depending on your release cadence and compliance you're under, and so on and so forth. The other type of instrumentation is the kinds that the vendors are doing for you. Vendors, whether it's an APM such as Dynamics or Datadog or Elastic, they provide you with an agent that knows how to instrument stuff on their own. And then you get kind of free instrumentation. You don't have to write any code. You don't have to do any work. But this code was written by a third-party vendor, and they are not very knowledgeable. They can't be knowledgeable about the insides of your code. So you're going to get very generic feedback about HTTP, about databases, but it's not going to go down deep into your business logic, into the decisions your code is making, and into the special things that often interest you. And Rookout is kind of trying to bring both worlds together. We want as a vendor to do the instrumentation, but essentially we allow you to control it, so that you can instruct us as a vendor to instrument whatever you want. And you do it essentially with a click of a button. So if you want a new log line, just click on the line, and we're going to instantly add a log line on that line. You can add a new metric on another line. And if you want and you're not sure, you can actually get a full snapshot of what's going on within that line, see the start trace, see the variable values, see everything. And then you can decide, is it interesting? Is it not interesting? Do I want to take those couple of variables, format them into a log line and send it? Do I want to create a metric out of this variable? Or is it useless and I want to move on? And by kind of bringing the best of both worlds, bringing the automated nature of APMs along with the surgical nature of coding, you get to select exactly what you want, the data you want to get. And you don't have to worry about overhead because you only pay for what you collect. So it's much more lightweight, it's much more accurate, and you can go as deep as you want. And best of all, it's very, very agile. Everything is instantaneous. And I think one of the terms we've coined over the last year or so has been logging FOMO. And it's something we're seeing our customers complain over time and time again. On the one hand, they want as many logs as possible. In fact, when we're meeting small companies, new products, stuff that are just starting out, they usually tell us they're running with all the logs enabled, they're running in debug or trace verbosity. They want to know every little thing, and they can generally afford it because it's a new product, there's very little traffic, very little transactions, you're not worried about the costs. But once you scale up, once you have to worry about performance, once you have to worry about scalability, about transaction costs, all of a sudden we're hearing customers say we can only afford to operate logging at info level or sometimes even at error level because it's so expensive for us and we just can't collect everything. And that's kind of where the FOMO comes from. So you can't afford to collect everything. At the same time, you're worried that once you're going to need a piece of data, it's going to be so expensive, so complicated, so time consuming to get that new log line that you are adding tons of log lines that are costing you a fortune, hurting your performance. And at the end of the day, that's just garbage. And you're constantly trying to filter them out in Kibana and so on. And the agile nature of Rookout, the ability to select in real time the data you want to collect, takes away that fear because, we're all going to make mistakes. We never know which log lines are going to be most important and which are not. And even if you got it right, those things change. Whether it's going to be a week from now, a month from now, or 5 years from now, the log lines you've initially decided on are not going to be the ones you truly need. Something else is going to become more important, something else become less important. And the dynamic nature of Rookout, the ability to agilely decide this is what I need right now and instantaneously turn it on, allows you to be much more agile in your observability posture. And so you can give away that fear. So whatever I'm going to need, I'm going to get it when I need it. No need to worry about it now and what I'm going to need in a year or 5.
Well, actually, I believe that agile part is extremely powerful in your offering where your customers, they actually can scale up and down depending on how much data they are going to collect or use by Rookout tool. Maybe you could also tell us what is it about moving to the cloud that makes applications so difficult to understand?
So I think we're seeing quite a few things change about the move to the cloud and the move to the cloud native applications. First and foremost, we're seeing the business side of things. SaaS allow us to deliver software at a much more efficient manner. So you're seeing more software being delivered. You're seeing more businesses and people consuming software and using it. And we're also seeing that the new cloud native paradigm is allowing us to build ever more complex, ever more scalable applications because of precisely those needs. We are delivering, we need that flexibility to become more complex. We want to deliver applications such as, Salesforce and Slack and AWS itself. Complexity is skyrocketing. We're delivering unprecedented complexity, and cloud native allows us to manage that complexity and break it down both from the tech side of containers and scalability and so on, but even more importantly from the people side, breaking engineers to different applications, allowing them to have their own areas of operations, areas of ownership, and kind of build everything together. But that complexity becomes very, very hard to manage. And as humans, we can only manage that much complexity. I mean, that's why the Tower of Babel fell, because complexity got too big. And we're seeing that time and time again, engineers kind of have to break through that complexity to see what the microservices next to them is doing. Why is it behaving that way? Seeing why request is failing, or why is it returning an unexpected value? Maybe they're trying to integrate everything, and tries you might. Those complexities mean more complex development environment. It means engineers spending more of their time testing and developing in the cloud instead of locally. It means more tests being carried out in integration environments. And you're seeing even this movement around testing in production. And it's a great movement. And the reason for that is you can only test so much in a lab. And as complexity skyrockets, it becomes ever harder to emulate real life in a lab. But all of that means we need to provide software engineers tools to operate in those environments. They need to operate in the cloud. They need to operate in production. They need to be able to test their code. They need to be able to understand their code. They need to be able to see what's going on and why. And traditionally, they didn't have the tools to do that. Logs were never meant for developers. Logs started out as a tool for ops, for security, and developers are kind of the tertiary beneficiary of that. And it's not good enough. If you want and we all want developers to move fast, build high quality software and release it and support it, they just need better tools that operate on their level, at the code level, to help them see what's going on and just fix it and deliver new features quickly and in a quality.
That you recently integrated with the Open Telemetry project and built new visuals there. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So we've always been fan of Open Telemetry and its predecessor Open Tracing, as well as all the other projects that are in the neighborhood. It's a bit of a political issue these days. I'm trying to stay away from that. But at the end of the day, we are also using it internally to operate and understand our own SaaS platform. And we found that when you're working as part of a complex service mesh, as part of a complex microservices application, or even just complex business logic in general, those traces can help you a lot to understand what's going on. And in that regard, Rookout integrates and collects that information. And there are a few benefits to that. On the one hand, one of the benefits is the same as you would use a stack trace to understand where in the application you are. How did you get here? So in a microservices application, the spans are the equivalent of your stack trace, because they show you when did the request start, where did it get, and how did it get from wherever it got started to you. So we see that it's a critical component for providing you that insight. And obviously everybody likes visualizing span. And it's fun that we can show a cool graphic on the application and crystal clear, showing you where you are within the flow. Additionally, by collecting the Open Telemetry information, we also allow you to correlate it. So once you have the transaction ID from Open Telemetry, you can also correlate it with your APM. You can correlate it with your logs. And it's very easy to cross-reference the data from Rookout to other tools. And as an added benefit for that, Rookout actually allows you to export data, even on the fly. So you can export new log lines on the fly, include transaction data in there. You can create new metrics. And as you're exporting all that data to other services, you can actually seamlessly integrate and seamlessly cross-reference and seamlessly visualize both traditional logging and Rookout generated logs on the fly using the same visualization tools.
So taking that part that you are part of the greater open source community, tell me how important it is for your company to contribute to open source ecosystem, and whether it helps you build new innovative products with a higher pace.
So at Rookout, we find contributing to open source very, very important. It's one of the core beliefs we have. And we're working very, very closely, especially with the runtime developers. We're working with the people behind Python, people behind Ruby and Java and so on. And by the very low level nature of what we're doing, and we're often taking those runtimes to the extremes. And we are quite often finding new bugs or new features that might not be working as expected. And it's very important for us to contact the people behind those features, the engineers working on those runtimes, and give feedback and identify, report those bugs, occasionally even open a suggested fix for them. And it's very important for us to be part of that community of helping those runtimes be better and making instrumentation and other code manipulation technologies easier and more accessible for everyone.
Once Rookout is installed in production, it works with sensitive client's data. So how do you guarantee the protection of the data collected by Rookout services? And how do you comply with security standards such as GDPR, HIPAA, and many others?
Yeah, so I have tons of answers. As I mentioned, I spent a decade of my life doing cybersecurity, so I have tons to say about security. And it's actually one of the topics we take great pride in. But I think the first most important point about security in Rookout is that when people first hear of Rookout, they're like, oh my God, oh no, you are allowing people to access my production data. This sounds like a huge security risk. And I challenge that assumption. I would argue that Rookout is a great tool for security. It's a great opportunity for security, because the thing is, your engineers need that data right now. And trust me, they find ways to get to that data. And those ways are far less regulated and far less secure than using Rookout. And in that regard, Rookout actually offers you a policy-based, fully audited approach for enabling access, secure access to that information in a way that meets your policies. So that in a way, everybody wins. Engineers get the data they need, and security, ops, compliance, legal, everybody can make sure that that access happens under the operating procedures and the regulations of the organization. Now, discussing some of the more technical ways we achieve that, first and foremost, we take a lot of compliance burden upon ourselves. We're SOC 2 Type 2 certified, ISO 27001, GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA. We take security very, very seriously. Additionally, we find that there are two very important points for our customers from a security perspective. The first is source code. And for that, we have a very simple answer. We never, ever touch customer source code. It's completely against company policy. We've just decided we're not going to process, store, handle customer source code in any way. It's not necessary for us. And everybody rests more easily knowing we just don't do it. Customer can keep protecting their source code however they prefer, and we know we have no access to it. So that's the first issue. The second most important element, which you've first described, was production data. And for that, we have a couple of options. First, as I mentioned, we have tons of compliance. And on top of that, we have a bunch of security features, including data reduction, role-based access controls, audit logs, and so on and so forth. And if that covers it for you, that's awesome. We're more than happy to process that data on your behalf and keep it very, very secure. Alternatively, many enterprises still prefer to keep the data on their behalf. And for that, we have a hybrid SaaS solution. In the hybrid SaaS solution, we essentially separate the data plane from the control plane. We manage the control plane in the cloud. So we do all the heavy lifting around database management, indexing, backupping, authorization, authentication, all the business logic, all the software upgrades, and so on and so forth. And you just have to install a couple of very lightweight, very simple containers. And those two containers keep all your data within your premise, whether it's a VPC in the cloud or a data center. And once you do that, you maintain full control, full data governance over your data. We never process it on your behalf. And you can rest easy knowing you're essentially not giving up anything. You're still in full control of your data. You can pipeline it, you can segregate it, you can process it in whatever part of the world you want without relying on us at all.
Well, that's a great answer. And actually, the part that your service and your tool does not touch the source code is actually something that can take the fear away. There are many traditional solutions for monitoring and observing traditional applications. However, when it comes to serverless, there are not so many instruments available. So how Rookout makes serverless more easily maintainable in production?
So I think that's a double-sided answer. I think we've been closely following serverless since it was first launched almost 5 years ago. And we've been working with a lot of customers and vendors in that area. And we're seeing that in a sense, serverless is shifting many of the paradigms around software engineering in general. Some of it is about shifting away from the server-oriented, instance-oriented model to a purely code-centric operational model, which is very, very odd in many ways. We're still trying to figure that out. You're no longer providing an application, a server, you're just providing a piece of code, especially if you're looking at the more dynamic languages such as Node.js or Python. You're literally just handing over your source files, not even built applications, and then AWS or Google or whoever is just going ahead and running them. And that's shifting the entire software development lifecycle, from writing the code to building it to operating it to monitoring it. It's an entirely different thing. And so we're seeing that as a huge difference. And as part of that change, we can now a lot of things become obfuscated for us. We lose a lot of control and a lot of visibility into those lower layers, which renders most of the traditional approaches, which relied on interacting with the server, with the application as a whole, inadmissible, because you're now operating at a code level. At the same time, this is actually we think a great fit for Rookout, because Rookout is very code-centric by its nature. We're not, unlike more traditional APMs or other tools, we don't care so much about the servers. There are tons of great tools that are doing that. And we're focusing first on the code and allowing you to see what's going on within it. And in the serverless model, there is nothing but code. So Rookout actually makes a great complement for that, because everything else, so to speak, AWS or whoever is taking care of, all that's left for you to take care of is the code. So Rookout is your perfect companion. And in general, we're seeing that across many technologies, tech stacks are becoming more and more production first. It's becoming more and more difficult to spin up an environment locally for testing, for development. And nowhere is this more true than serverless, where it can be almost impossible to spin up a decent development environment locally, even for the simplest projects. And things become more complex, it's getting even harder. And because there aren't any debuggers there, we're seeing many customers rely on Rookout for debugging serverless, even in development. Even as they're writing the code, Rookout is a great fit, and not just for later stages where you're integrating and testing and running in production.
To build these great products, you should have a great people in your team. How difficult it is for Rookout to find the right people that actually understand the values of the company?
So team has always been a huge priority for us at Rookout. And it's obviously starts with hiring the right people, and it goes on into nurturing them and helping them grow within the company and helping them achieve their goals, both within the company and later on as they leave. And I think what we're seeing, we're investing a lot of effort in the hiring process, and especially today with hiring so difficult, you have to invest on both sides. You have to meet a lot of people, you have to get a lot of people interested, and you have to get the right people interested, the people you want interested, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. And there's the other side, which is putting in the work for making sure that the people you are actually bringing on, the people you're actually signing on, are the right people and the people you want to keep. And for us, there are a few key elements, especially for engineers. We want people who love technology. We're building a very tech-focused project. There's a lot of advanced technology, both within our agents themselves, which are very cutting edge and very unique, and also in other parts of the code, whether it's a SaaS platform or the front end. We love technology. As founders, our customers love technology. So at the same time, we want people who care deeply about technology. We want people where that obsession also have a limit, whereas that obsession is bounded by other realistic concerns. first and foremost, people who want their technology to be released and understand that in order to release a technology, they have to make compromises. And those compromises they have to make in the favor, in order to serve the customers, in order to support the product, in order to serve the business, are very, very important. And those are driving the company forward. And in a way, I want people to feel just a little bit bad that they've made those compromises, but still I want them to know that that's the right thing to do. And I think that's the right balance for us in that regard. And we want people who care deeply about that element, about working with the customers, about satisfying the customers. And I think one of the fun things about being a building a developer-focused product is that our engineers get to service people who are similar to them. They get to see themselves in the end customers, so they can very easily communicate with them directly. They can see how their product helps them and improves their lives. And it also provides a lot of interesting opportunities in those channels. They can interact with our customers in conferences, in online channels. They can write blog posts. They can speak at events. And that's a very high priority for us, which isn't always the case for all tech companies where the product is focused on, let's say, techie markets. Other than that, it's also important. A couple of other qualities that are pretty important for us are about teamwork and about improving the people around you and contributing and learning from them, as well as about personal growth. People who want to grow, people who want to learn, people who want to use the people around them in the company and the place they're in to create a better version of themselves.
One of my last question is about the name, right? Rookout. What does it stand for? What does it mean?
So Rook is actually the name of a kind of raven. It's a very clever raven, one that's actually very good at solving puzzles. So for instance, if it can use tools, it can use small sticks of wood to pick up stuff and get food where it's inaccessible to it. And we like the thought of being a very smart bird somewhere within your application that helps you bring out the data you need on the fly.
Oh, that's a very clever name. I really like it. Liran, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your valuable insights with our listeners.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening in.
It's been a great pleasure.